Welcome back to a brand new episode of the Bold American Podcast. We have a great show for you today to include a very fun interview that I was able to do with an author by the name of Gwendolyn Bounds, who wrote a book called Little Chapel on the River, which is about a pub and country store that is it's still there, but it's under new ownership and a new name. But an interesting story nonetheless, connected to 9/11. We'll get to that. There is a big super secret meeting taking place with over 800 generals and admirals across the Department of Defense this week down in Quantico. And there have been some leaks about what they're going to talk about, but overall, nobody really knows the point of this meeting. And to my knowledge, it's unprecedented. So we'll talk about that. We are going to talk about a congressman from my state of New Jersey who is currently running for governor, Mikie Sherril, a Naval Academy graduate from the class of 94. Luckily so, I guess. And we'll get into why that is an interesting story. And then finally, I want to get your guys' take on a new business that is sweeping the Bay Area out there in San Francisco, and just get your thoughts on that. But before we get into all of those stories, we're going to start with Last 72. Ryan, we will start with you.
Okay. Well, let's see. Last 72 involved the Eagles going to become 4-0, Navy 4-0. I mean, there's not much else to say. That's kind of where we are from that trajectory.
Is that why you're partying right now? That's why you're partying right now. Because of the 4-0 start.
I mean, listen, I said in the beginning of the season that for better or worse, my weeks are a little bit determined by how the Eagles and Navy football does. You guys want to be like, oh, Connor, they're not in any AP standings. Like, it's fine. I mean, we're still 4-0 for Navy. You can't discount. And then Rob, let's bring it back to you. You said in the beginning of the season that I was kind of, I don't know, I was ridiculous for thinking the Eagles were going to do well this season. And here we are again, 4-0, and like looking like a dominating team. So again, that's all I'm saying. I'm not going to say more than that. But outside of that, I'm actually at, and Connor, I've got to get you here as a golfer. I'm at Robert Trent Jones in Gainesville, Virginia. This course is immaculate. I mean, I've been to a lot of nice golf courses. This golf course is bar none, like one of the best golf courses I've ever been at. We had an event here today for the Travis Manning Foundation, and just an awesome event. It was, and every year I come here, this is the 7th year we've had it here, and it's so beautiful. So next year, people are asking about you, Con.
Oh, were they? They're wishing I was there because I'm an excellent person to have around.
Barstool co-host? Yeah, they were like, doesn't he like to golf? And I was like, he's got a brand new baby at home, he would be here. So next year you've got to come for sure.
I can do that. I would certainly love to get down to that course. But you mentioned it's one of your favorites. Outside of, I won't ask you to put, I guess you can put this on top of your list, but name your top 3 favorite golf courses that you've been to. You said you've been to a lot of nice courses. What are your top 3?
Well, okay, maybe I haven't been to a lot of nice courses, but also all the courses that I've golfed at are nice courses.
Okay.
I mean, listen, I love the Union League courses. I love Liberty Hill, right outside of Philadelphia, and I love National. I think those are both beautiful courses. I don't know.
Yeah, those are good answers. I think Union League now, following their renovations that they did, and this is getting really inside baseball with golf across the country, I think they're going to find themselves within the top 200 for sure, if they're not there already. But they're definitely a top course in New Jersey now with the renovation that they did. So that's not surprising to hear. It's a great club, great course.
You played that with me. I think Marion is also a beautiful course. or something.
Yeah,
about,
I would say Marion's
I
Marion's a top 20 course. So yeah, I'd say you could say Marion's a good place to put on your list. As it relates to the Eagles, listen, that bodes well for me. Because I'm married to a staunch Eagles fan, and them winning makes her happy, and I love to see my wife happy. As for Navy, good for them. I'm not going to poo-poo the fact that they've won every game they've played thus far. My point was simply what you're seeing. I think this is partly because I think a lot of people in the AP don't really know what they're doing. People who get an AP vote. I think the AP poll is largely broken. But I also just think it's unfortunate that Navy's doing as well as they are this year, because I think the American Conference has really established itself now as a premier conference. And you look at how top heavy it is. And I don't
South Florida, right? I mean, just look at those guys playing against Miami too. Like the whole conference is, not to cut you off, but it's like, I don't think anyone expected this.
Right. Well, I mean, I don't know. I wouldn't go so far as to say nobody expected it, but you have other undefeated teams in the American, and I don't know. I just don't think that Navy has the same pop. I don't know. I mean, if they keep winning, they'll by a week, if they're 6-0 or 7-0, they'll find themselves in the top 25, especially if they're one of the very few last remaining undefeateds. I think it will be very tough for them to finish the season undefeated, just given their schedule. But if Army could be 4-0 right now, I would take that. But then again, 2023, we started out 1-5 and ended up winning the Commander-in-Chief's trophy. So, all right, Ryan was dealing with internet issues in Virginia there, so she had to drop, but she wanted just to get her last 72 in to talk about her teams. And listen, if all of my teams were undefeated, I'd want to talk about it too. So I get it. I don't begrudge.
I would be hammered right now too, Cons. I would be just taking it off into the week, like a birthday week. So
Rob, what was your last 72?
Yeah, so last 72 will be last weekend for me. We had that little event and hiccup with the Military Influencer Conference. I didn't get a chance to speak about the Oktoberfest event that I went to here in Las Vegas. Just want to give a quick shout out to Dave Alberga, who's a mentor of mine, West Point guy, class of 84, I believe. He used to throw this festival called Rise, which is a lantern festival. Well, him and his buddy Dan decided to put on a Oktoberfest event in Las Vegas. Was able to see the operations, the logistics of putting on like 100,000 person event here in Las Vegas on Fremont Street. It was fantastic. It was authentic, from the beer to the food, to the games, the Stein holding, the Nagelspiel. Everything was legit. Everything was authentic. And it was just cool to see that in Las Vegas, like a 12-hour flight away from Germany. So shout out to those guys. And if you haven't been to an Oktoberfest event in the US or, back in Germany, you should definitely try to do it sometime.
I have to admit, I don't like
You
German
don't give
beer.
a fuck.
I don't like German beer. No, I just don't like German beer. I don't like the way it tastes. It doesn't.
Is it like the aftertaste maybe? Or what?
I think so. I just don't like these those really wheat forward beers.
Oh, same.
So I don't know. But I mean, I love the pretzels. So
the pretzels. What's your go-to beer then? What's Cons drinking on like a Saturday with Army?
Shout out to friend of the company, Miller. I'm a Miller Lite guy. I always have been. I think it's just simple and easy.
Solid.
But I mean, there's a litany of other beers who I won't mention by name. But there are a lot of beers I enjoy. But if I'm just getting beers for myself to have in the cooler while I'm watching TV outside, it's Miller Lights. Just keep it, great taste, less filling. Always delivers.
Dude, mine used to be Silver Bullet, Coors. But yeah, what about you, Sands? What's yours?
I'm a Coors Light guy. Yeah.
Okay, I could see that.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, but no. Yeah, Oktoberfest. It was sick.
Nice. My last 72 is, I can't remember my last 72, and I don't know if that's a byproduct of my memory.
Oh, dude.
My lack of sleep with this new kid, although he's started the last few days. I don't want to knock on wood. I don't want to jinx it. He's starting to give us some longer stretches at night, and any parent.
Fuck yeah, let's go. That's huge.
That's when things start to get a little bit better. When you can start to really plan to have the kid down at a certain time, and they're going to sleep through the night. Again, knock on wood. Every kid is different. You don't know. It's not like a given, like, oh, I only breed good sleepers. Some people might think that, or maybe that is true for some people, but I think you got to just wait and see how it plays out. So
I'm happy for you.
Yeah.
I was going to check in on you about that even offline between us on the text, but I'm glad to hear that, especially after the first 3-4 weeks and that adrenaline kind of runs away from having that baby. It's game time. It's like Ranger school, man. So I'm glad to hear that's going well.
Yeah. And I'm really racking my brain. Yeah. Cause Army played on Thursday night. That was
that was kind of weird.
That was not great, but it was also interesting because then on Saturday there was no obligation that I had in front of a TV, and I was on daddy daycare again. Now I'm remembering that my wife went out with her girlfriends to a bar restaurant for somebody's birthday. So I was at home with the kids. Some of the other dads from daycare came over, and again, we just rolled out the bouncy house, put them in the bouncy house and said, have at it. But
nice.
Overall, just really uneventful weekend, which I think is a good thing because I think we're going to ramp things up here pretty soon. But anyway, let's get into some of these topics. Let's start with the super double secret probation meeting that is happening this week down in Quantico, where there are over 800 generals, admirals across the different branches of the military, their aides that have been summoned on short notice. From my understanding, maybe they got more notice, but from my notice, it's very short notice to come to Quantico to discuss who knows, because nobody really knows. I've seen some things leak that Secretary Hegseth wants to talk about the warrior ethos and the new standards for grooming and a lot of matters that, again, this is what's being leaked to the public, so maybe there's more important stuff that's going to be discussed. But from what I've seen thus far, feels like it could be virtual as opposed to bringing people from all over the globe. Literally, we have people all over the globe coming to this meeting. So just curious what you guys think about this meeting that's happening this week and what they could possibly be talking about.
First off, it's really upsetting that we weren't invited to this to shoot content and to interview generals, because like, come on, like we're not getting invited to the military influencer conference. We're clearly not invited to some other conferences. Like, I think the Department of War, the Secretary of War could have done himself a huge solid here. No, I think it's entertaining. We're not necessarily in a Cold War type situation anymore, or I don't really necessarily agree that we can't have all generals together in the same room. I feel like corporate America, even the government does that in the White House. Like, everyone just kind of links up, takes orders, shakes hands. But I think the short notice piece of it was very clear and intentional. But yeah, those are kind of my thoughts. I'm not really sure what Pete's going to talk about. Maybe the new branding for the Secretary of War or whatever, the Department of War, whatever it is. Maybe they'll play some pickleball and talk about Army Navy. But dude, your guess is as good as mine. And there's going to be so many more leaks too.
I just think if you're going to bring them together, this needs to be maybe a week-long type retreat, right? This can't be hey, come on in, we're going to meet for 2 hours and okay, you can go on your way back to your various duty stations. It's got to be a little bit more meaty than, hey, just come for a quick meeting. So I do think that we're going to see some reports coming out of this where there are bigger topics being discussed other than just the new grooming standards, because that would be patently ridiculous to get people about new haircuts.
Dude, Connor, to your point, like there's going to be some discussions probably about like AI modernization, learnings and failures from each regional command. People are seeing, maybe they'll do a PT test. That's kind of funny going around, like that fucking slogan that was hanging off the Pentagon or some building in DC. It was definitely not the Pentagon, but it was hanging in DC, I think. And it said Hegseth PT the generals.
PT the generals.
Like that's kind of my humor. I love that kind of shit. But Pete, no lie, he's a stud, man, when it comes to some of the physical fitness stuff. So I am curious to see if we see some PT photos out, all these generals. And rocking their PT belts, running around fucking 3-5K.
Yeah, but again, you can't have people coming from all over the globe to do a PT test. I'm sorry, that's just
I don't think it's going to be a PT test, but I think there's going to be some sort of physical demands tossed in there.
Maybe. No, and if he does do that, then I think that's fine, but it can't be the only reason. But I think credit to them that no other information is leaked except what I've seen already. And then everything I've seen, I guess what I'm getting at is this. Everything I have seen is very frivolous, right? Mm-hmm. And does not warrant coming from all over the world, people being on airplanes for a day at a time just to get to this meeting. So we'll see. We'll see how it goes.
I'm curious too. It's this week, right? It's like tomorrow or Wednesday.
Tomorrow. We're recording Monday night. I believe it starts tomorrow, Tuesday.
Okay. Well, maybe we do an emergency Twitter live or something, depending on what happens. We'll see.
We could do that, but again, I don't know that anything's going to leak out of there because
I know
we'll have to. But I don't know. We'll wait and see. Okay, and then the next story is close to the program, but also close to me because it is involving a congressman from New Jersey, Mikie Sherril, who is a 1994 Naval Academy grad, and she's running for governor. And a story came out recently that she was involved in a cheating scandal that occurred at the Naval Academy where there was a test. Maybe it was like, I think, electrical engineering, where there was a previous answer key that was passed around to different cadets, and people have come out and said that they estimated 60% of the students taking the course were cheating and knew the answers, which is a substantial amount. For those who are unaware, at all the academies, there's an honor code that says you're not going to lie, cheat, steal, or tolerate those who do. And her punishment, according to her, was that she did not cheat, but she refused to rat out any of her classmates who she knew were cheating. Now, the punishment for that was she was allowed to graduate on the same day as her classmates, commission on the same day as her classmates, but just not walk in the graduation ceremony or hear her name announced in the graduation ceremony. And that sounded odd to me because I had never heard of that being a punishment at West Point. You either walk on graduation day or you're a summer grad or you're a December grad. No one has ever gotten in trouble and just not been able to walk on graduation, but still commission the same day and graduate the same day. So I asked around to some Naval Academy grads who were from different eras, and everybody came back and said the same thing, that they had never heard of that happening before. So maybe there are other instances of this happening, but from what I can see, she's a super unique case. And there's another aspect of this too that we'll get into, but let's just start there. Rob, what do you think about old Mikie Sherril and her claim that she didn't cheat, but couldn't walk on graduation?
Yeah, man. I mean, I'll preface this by saying that I was on the honor staff at West Point. I may have not had the best grades, but I was on the honor staff because I thought the honor code and still to this day is incredibly important to uphold, and there should be a standard. And in my time serving as an honor secretary and being a judge on maybe 10 different honor boards my senior year, I've never seen a punishment or any situation happen like this. Typically, people, to your point, cadets are deferred to later in the summer to graduate, throw their hat up if it's 1, 2, or 3 people, and then go on about their way and go to Bullock, or they become a turnback, or they go in the military for Army mentorship for a year or 2 and then have to reapply. So the Navy just continues to not really disappoint, but just kind of show how there's almost like a lack of not honor, but maybe like rigor when it comes to their honor code.
Well, so from what I understood reading about it, their superintendent at the time was trying to rehabilitate these people and not kick them out. So they went about it a different way because I think each superintendent is allowed to interpret the honor code or not interpret the honor code. That's
the superintendent has the final say at both.
He has the ability to enforce it how he sees fit.
Correct.
And each instance is taken on its face. I just think it's a little fishy that she was punished in a manner that no one else had ever heard of before. Because so basically what she's saying is they had her dead to rights, and they were able to somehow prove that she knew who was cheating on this exam and refused. I think that's one of the hardest things to prove. It's like, hey, you have this information and you're just not coming forward with it. So I don't know. It just seems fishy to me. The other aspect of this is now it came out yesterday that she has 2 children that are now going to the Naval Academy. And wouldn't you know it, they got their nomination from Mikie Sherril. So mom gave them the nomination. And for those who are unfamiliar, part of the process of going to one of the military academies is getting a nomination from a congressman, senator, vice president, president. So you can do the math. There's only a handful of those out there across the United States. So it's not something where they just hand them out like Tic Tacs. It's a very competitive thing to get the nomination from an elected official. So for her to give 2 of her nominations to her children, I mean, there's nepotism, and then there's whatever this is on steroids. And it just seems to me like you should have given those off to maybe another person within, New Jersey, maybe one of the senators. I don't know. It just seems, again, not on the up and up that she would do this for her children.
Yeah, and to your first part there of the statement, was there any other naval graduate, I guess, that also received that punishment, or was she like one of like 50 and she was like the only one to kind of receive this kind of different graduation?
Everything I've seen is all those folks who were caught up in this particular cheating scandal were either kicked out, turned back. But from what I have seen, she's the only one who got her very specific punishment, which was, again, graduate and commission on the same day, just not walk in the graduation ceremony.
Dude, honestly, like why West Point does this so well and the mentorship program succeeds so well is you just own up to it. You say you fucked up, even if you lied, cheated, or stole, and you just go about your fucking life, man. And like, I just don't understand why. It looks like she became a pilot. I'm not sure if it was fixed wing, rotary, whatever, but she's in her 50s now. Like, she's clearly hiding something if it's such a thorn in her side, and now her children are involved. I don't know. It's just like, it's so stupid. It's like, no one actually cares. Like, she's the one who's probably making it a bigger deal by just hiding it. Yeah. Also, I thought it was all public record. I thought through like a FISA, or not FISA, some sort of FOIA Information Act, that you can get this information from any academy. Like, if I run for office in 20 years, someone can get Rob Bachman's information.
So what I think is the issue is that there are accusations that her opponent leveraged his relationship with Trump to get additional information and put out her social security number publicly.
That's
and
fucked.
If that happened, that's really messed up. But yeah, I agree. I think there should be a FOIA request ability to find out who and when graduated from each of the academies.
Because you should be able to get, the GPA, and then like my trouble criminal record from West Point, where I marched 100 plus hours. Like, I was an asshole when I was a kid at. It's nothing like sacred. It's nothing like I need to hide. I mean, sure, it's embarrassing, but you just kind of get over it because there's so many people that fuck up and learn from it. So I'm just like, it's just a bummer to see that someone who's seeking, office like this just has to lie and like hide something that people honestly, truly don't care about. Like, trust me, no one cares what you did 30 years ago at the Naval Academy for some test.
Well, in this instance, I would argue that they do care because it's really hurting her right now.
Right. In this
race for governor.
Right.
So I think she's kind of fighting for her life because she had a massive lead and not to get too deep into politics, especially in state politics, but she had a massive lead in the governor's race and it's tied now. So I don't think she wants whatever the truth is of this story to come out, because I think it will really, really hurt her, because I think in today's day and age of politics, once people find a story about you, regardless of the fact that it was 30 years ago, they're going to latch onto that, and good luck getting away from that this close to the election.
Right. In this case, Connor, real quick. Real quick. Sorry. if she just kind of got ahead of it, don't you think if you're running for some sort of political office, even if it's lower in stature or position, that you kind of cover these items and you kind of just like maybe just kind of open it up early so that when you do seek higher office, that it's just kind of like, hey, that was discussed 5-10 years ago. Like, it's no big deal. But yeah, it's just, it's a shame that like she's going to all these lengths just to cover up some dumb test.
Yeah, I think she's making it worse, but I think the crux of this is most people don't get past the headline. All they see is caught up in cheating scandal. They don't get to the byline that says like she didn't cheat. She was just accused of not ratting out her classmates who did cheat, which again, that's something that's, you know, part of our honor codes too. It's like, you can't tolerate cheating either. I know that's a weird thing for a lot of people to understand, but that's the honor code that you sign up to live by when you go to one of the academies. And that's just the way it is. Yeah. What's interesting too, though, is her husband is also her classmate, and he was caught up in the cheating scandal. And he was part of a lawsuit that sued the Navy as a result of this cheating scandal. So it's just a mess. It's a messy, messy thing. And I don't know that she's going to get away from it anytime soon. And I just think there's more that we don't know yet. Yeah. And selfishly, because I'm nosy, I want it all to come out because I have a hard time believing we have heard the full story. So we'll see. You know, one thing though, that we have seen in terms of, you know, naming, there's a naming consultant out in San Francisco in Silicon Valley right now. And this woman will name your child for the low price of $30,000. He started out charging like $100, $200. And then someone said, you should just charge more. People will pay it. And listen, this isn't a knock on her.
Yeah. It's America, baby.
Respect the hustle.
Yeah.
Because she now put this number out there, 30,000, that you get a name, you get a branding consultation, all of this stuff that is just completely ridiculous. But somehow she has manifested this into a business. And it's just crazy to me that you're going to spend $30,000 to name your kid Paul.
Yo, that tech money is for real though. That tech money's fucking for real, dude.
I think that's what it is. It's like if you're worth 10 billion, what's 30K?
It's some incredible fuck you money in the AI space right now up in Palo Alto, Silicon Valley. Talk about just pure capitalism, like the baby naming market, dude. I mean, now I'm so jealous right now. Like, what the fuck?
Yeah, I just don't know how to break into something like that is just completely ridiculous, but somehow end up making it an actual business. Because guess what? Even if she only is able to make this business last for a couple of years, that's a heck of a way to make a living for a few years and to bank this much cash.
Yeah.
So I
and then just buy a ton of stock from the people that own the companies that paid you because, you know, they're worth a fuck ton of money. What, do we have any examples of the names that she's curated, or is that like on lock? Is that?
No, I haven't seen anything, but I also don't think it's like she's giving wild names. It's not like, hey, you know, I don't even want to say any names because I don't want to insult anyone. I think she's given like pretty standard names. I'm sure there are some instances where they're a little out there, but again, it's saying, hey, we're going to call your son Brian because that represents what you want him to achieve in this life. Yeah. And we feel the name Brian will allow him to do that best. Again, this is like, you know, shout out to the consultants of the world, the McKinsey's, Boston Consulting Group, who charge you an arm and a leg to give you a PowerPoint deck and tell you you're doing everything wrong and not actually fix anything.
Yeah, I have a sense that your daughter is going to be a huge cheater in 20 years. So let's name her Mikie. Shit like that. Yeah. You know what I'm saying?
Right. Right.
Good for her. Good for this woman. You know, shout out to her. America, baby.
Yes. And speaking of America, let's throw it to this interview I did with Gwendolyn Bounds, who wrote Little Chapel on the River. And I talk about it in the interview, but it's interesting how life just kind of finds you where you are. And I was reflecting on this recently, Rob, and I said, and you can relate to this, when you're a platoon leader, you can't really, you not really, you can't be friends with your soldiers in your platoon. There's a chain of command, there's a certain way to compose yourself, and you can't be friends. So when you deploy, and in my case, when I deployed, the other lieutenants in my battery, we were all on these different schedules. And admittedly, not until later in my deployment, when I met my buddy Rob, I wasn't really close to these lieutenants. Like, we were close in a professional sense, but we weren't battle buddies, because we weren't going out on missions together. So largely I was alone for the first few months of my deployment. I didn't realize this until I was reflecting on it these last couple of days. I was very alone. So then I go to this library. I find this book that's all about this deli bar country store that's across the river from West Point that I had gone to a bunch of times on my way down to Manhattan. Didn't even realize a book was written about it. And I just really connected with it, and it found me at a really hard time. So here's the interview that I was able to do with Gwendolyn. All right, joining us now on the Bold American podcast is a very special and interesting guest, and in many ways a very personal guest to me, although we have just met 3 minutes ago face-to-face for the first time. But someone that came into my life a long time ago, and that is author Gwendolyn Bounds, who wrote the book, The Little Chapel on the River. And we'll get into what that book is about. But I think the best way to kind of set the scene, and Wendy, welcome to Bold American. Thank you very much for joining us. Sorry, I got a little overzealous there. I'm excited to talk about this, but welcome to the show.
Yeah, I'm glad to be here. I like overzealous, right? That's just better than being muted. So let's go.
Good. All right. So let's set the scene on terms of how we got here today. I was sitting in my home recently, and I was looking at my wall where I have all of my books, my library, so to speak. And one of the spines jumped out at me, and it was your book, and it transported me back to 2008, the summer of 2008. And I found myself in Iraq, and I was a platoon leader, and we were stationed at LSA Anaconda. And as I was reflecting on this time just the other day, I realized I was extremely lonely at this point, because I was a lieutenant and I had my platoon, but anybody who has experienced life in the military knows that, the line between officers and enlisted, platoon leader, platoon, is a fine line, not one that should be crossed, and fraternization is not looked kindly upon. So I really didn't have anyone else really there at that time to just spend time with, talk with. And I found myself after one of my missions, and we were out on a very hectic schedule, almost basically every day we were out on missions. And I found myself late one night in one of the buildings that we had occupied on the base there. And I was going through a makeshift library there in Iraq, all the books that had been sent over to our unit and previous units that were stationed there. And I guess I'm just looking for something to read. I'm looking to kill time. Who knows? And sure enough, eye level on one of the shelves is a book, and it has a very distinct shamrock on it. Now, being an Irish guy, this immediately caught my eye. So I grabbed the book, and you can see here, I got the book here. You can see that shamrock. And I pulled the book off the shelf, and I noticed the picture, and I said, wait a second, that looks familiar. Yeah. And I start thumbing through the book, and I realize it's the Garrison train station right across the river from West Point. So immediately I'm intrigued, and I flip and I read a couple pages, and I say to myself, well, I have to read this now. And that's how we have you here now, Wendy, as you were the author of this book. And it really is a fascinating story. So if I could transport us back to September 10th, 2001, if you could just tell us where you were at in your life and how you found yourself in Lower Manhattan there on September 10th.
First of all, thank you for sharing that story. Very personal. And thank you also for your service, which is much appreciated. September 10th, we wouldn't have had what transpired 24 hours after that. You and I would not be having this conversation. Right. I was a reporter and editor for the Wall Street Journal. where I had gone to work right out of college. I was living in downtown Manhattan, right next to the Wall Street Journal's offices, which were also in downtown Manhattan, literally across the street from the World Trade Center towers. So that was September 10th, and I clearly gone to work, gone home that night, Monday, and then I believe September 11th was a Tuesday,
Yes.
and woke up the next morning, was in the shower, getting ready to go to work as usual, when I heard one of the loudest noises I've ever heard, which sounded like someone had dropped something just super heavy in our building, on top our building. And I got out of the shower and wasn't sure. And I heard people screaming outside the window, and went and looked outside the window over at the World Trade Center towers, and smoke was coming out of them. And the first thought was a commuter plane has hit the
Mhm.
World Trade Center towers. And so turned on the TV and the news, just because that's the instinct.
Mhm.
And
Yeah, and because back then, like, that was like our source, right? Like, we didn't have
yeah,
phones.
you
didn't
weren't
have
Twitter, and right,
Yeah,
right. You turned on
right.
the TV to sort of figure out what was happening. And so in the same time I saw a plane, and then I heard a plane, the second plane fly overhead, and then this, and saw it on the screen of the TV live on CNN at the same time that I heard it. And when the second plane hit, it, even though we didn't have terrorism kind of embedded in our consciousness the way we do now, since we have after that date, you knew two planes couldn't be an accident. So
Right.
grabbed, put on shoes, regretted that I chose flip-flops and sandals at the time, grabbed my
Well, it was a
reporter.
nice day. It was
Yeah,
warm.
nice day. You had no idea. Reporter's pad, ran outside, and gathered with a friend of mine who was outside, and people were just kind of milling about. And then not too long later, the first tower fell. And it's all the things we have seen on TV, the smoke billowing around the corners and the chaos, and men were then outside running by in their boxer shorts, and people pushing baby carriages in a panic. And then the second tower fell, and you heard them, you couldn't see anything. You heard the roar of planes overhead. We didn't know it was probably our own military at the time. We thought maybe we were being bombed in downtown Manhattan. And it was chaos at the end of the island. To make what was a very long felt like the longest few hour of my life down there short, is we called a ride with a food truck vendor. He was basically trying to escape and get out of downtown Manhattan, and he led us onto his truck. And so we drove up the highway in Manhattan, the FDR highway, passing out any liquid he had in his truck to people who were fleeing on foot so they could wash their faces off.
Mhm.
And that was the last time I ever slept in that apartment. A piece of the Trade Center had gone through it and damaged it very badly. But obviously I was among the very lucky ones downtown that day, because I lived. And in the course of that, I didn't have a place, I didn't have a home, and ended up staying with some friends in this tiny hamlet of Cold Spring and Garrison, which is where I later encountered the Irish pub and country store that you saw on the cover of that book and recognized so well from your days at West Point. So that gets us kind of in a quick way from September 10th to how I found the place that then you found at a very pivotal time in your life.
Yes.
Probably when you were at West Point, and then again when you were lonely and overseas and saw something that felt familiar to you. And therein, I think, lies the essence of this story.
Yes, it is. And just to be clear, you were forced ultimately to flee Manhattan and flee your home. Did you have anything really other than the clothes on your back at that point, or did you
Not
go
that
back?
day.
Or
No, I mean, we went back when we probably shouldn't have, just for safety reasons, the next day, because we had pets who were still in
okay,
the my friend and I, in the apartment buildings. And there was no elevator, like you were climbing. We didn't know at the time there were gas leaks. We were climbing up with, I think we have a candle, which was, now that I think about it, that could have been a disaster.
oh my gosh,
Rescued,
yeah,
rescued the animals, got the animals out. The things we saw that day. I mean, you have seen, in any, I think, soldier who's been in combat has seen things they don't ever
Mhm.
want to see. And we saw a lot of things that day that, um, you know, uh, you wish you hadn't seen when we were going back to the apartment building. But that after that, there was no going back for a while. So we borrowed clothes from friends and borrowed a place. We went from apartment to apartment, and there was no home
Right.
until finally getting up to visit some friends in this area of Cold Spring and Garrison across from West Point. And on the way going back to look for a new place to live one day, I stumbled into this Irish pub and country store called Guinan's.
Okay.
And
Yes.
that's the day where, it was supposed to just go in there for a moment, ended up having one beer in the back bar with the old Irish proprietor, Jim Guinan, who was 80. One beer became two. And the stories he told and the safety, the community that I felt amid a world that seemed like it was just completely lost was what led me to 12 days later move to Garrison, New York, and rent a home up there, which ultimately led to the writing of this book.
Wow. I mean, speaks to Mr. Guinan that over the course of 2 beers, he made an impression on you such that you said, okay, I feel safe up here. Now, granted, there's a military base, albeit a bunch of students, but I have to imagine maybe that gave some semblance of safety. But more so than that, this gentleman made this impression on you. So what was going through your mind? What did he say, or what did he offer to you that said, okay, I feel safe here, as opposed to, let me, forgive me. Where are you from?
North Carolina, which is where
Right.
I
So
actually am right now.
as
Yep.
opposed to, let me stay here in this small little quaint village, as opposed to go home to North Carolina. What did Mr. Guinan impress upon you that felt like, really, okay, I can stay here?
I think there are a couple of things. And you've been in the spot. So
Mhm.
the spot itself nestled snug against the train tracks on the Hudson River, where it was, we were starting to head into fall at that point when I discovered it in November. I remember the trees and the leaves still changing, which they always do every year, but it just
Mhm.
astounded me that that was happening in a moment where the world seemed like it had just been flipped upside down. So the stability of seeing that's not something I would have noted in New York City necessarily, right? The stability of nature, there was this constant of the river standing there. And yes, I think to some degree, even though I didn't know a lot about West Point at the time, the feeling of that sort of fortress and that across the river, there was just an anchor there. But more than anything, Jim Guinan, the proprietor, and the people in that bar, they opened their arms and made a community within a couple of hours and made way for a stranger to be in their midst with no questions asked, right? And it wasn't, it wasn't about politics or who you knew or where you came from. There was just a safety net offered for someone who had really, at that point, literally nowhere to go.
Mhm.
And that feeling is what bound me to that place, because I wanted to feel that again at that time. And I heard that from a lot of cadets often who were across the river at West Point once I set about writing the book, and we can get to that in a moment. But the cadets, this is something you alluded to when you said you were lonely. Like the cadet, it can be very lonely as a cadet over at West Point. And Mr. Guinan would often allow the cadets they would come over and they'd go into the city, but they needed to change out of their uniforms first. And he
Yep.
would let them leave their uniforms lined up in his living room floor, give them rides back to West Point if they needed. He provided sort of this safety continuity of home there. So I immediately felt that myself and was very drawn to it.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned the rides too, because although it's, just across the river, it's still, you got to go back down towards the Bear Mountain Bridge to get back. It's still about 15 minutes or so, so it's not
Yeah.
an easy jaunt. And the ferry was not always running, and I don't even know if that ferry runs anymore, to be very candid with you. But you mentioned the people, and I think that's what's so great about this book too. I think, and what's so great about this old bar is that less and less today do we see bars that have these for lack of a better word, characters,
Yeah.
right? And these folks that fall into the sort of stereotypes that you might think about, harkens back to, old show Cheers. Can you tell me about, some of these people? And, in a lot of ways, you were a little bit of a fish out of water, young girl who was displaced from her home among these people that were, mostly all older than you, different parts of their lives and grew up very different from you. So can you tell me about, some of those people and how they made you feel?
They were, well, first of all, I want to underscore something you're saying, which I think is the reason why we're talking. And because you feel it, I feel it, and so many other people I've spoken to feel it, which is this loss of these places that we go that aren't home, that aren't work, these places we go and we can find um, commonalities, even among people from whom we may be very different, which is what you're
Yes.
getting at.
Yes.
And that is what happened in the walls inside of Guinan's. There wasn't really social media back then, so that we weren't constantly on these scrolling all the time with our heads down. You actually listened to people and you had conversations, and there were rules inside of this pub and country store, which is that you could disagree, but no one was ever going to yell at anyone or scream at anyone. The politics, again, could be quite different, but you had to learn to find common ground. You could certainly argue your point, but if that person you were arguing with, if their spouse or their child needed help or something happened at their home, you're going to help them, right? There's just you found more commonality than you did differences. And that was Jim Guinan and his wife Peg's rules when she was alive back in the pub, and people respected that. And so we've lost a little bit of that as we have moved our communities online, where I think people feel quite comfortable saying anything they want in a comment on a social media channel, things they would never say to another human being in person. And so
that just, sorry to interrupt, but that just bothers the heck out of me, how people are so brash behind their phones and their screens and their computers. And so often I find when I send people a private message, they're incredibly cordial and polite. It's like, well, why did you feel the need to call me that name or take that angle with me? And so often I think I just want to have a conversation. And it seems like that's what you're getting at here in terms of the discourse that occurred in Guinan's.
yes, and I think we've lost something with that. And, you can see the ripple effects of that throughout our entire country. And that is, it is to our detriment, and we have to find ways to rebuild it. And to some degree, I think work like podcasts, things of this nature can help do that. There is a way to bridge those communities online, but we still have to have kind of unwritten civility and rules of the road, the kinds of things you would have in a public place with someone. And we do have to find ways to bring people who come up with different systems of belief and from different backgrounds and bring them in to physical spots together where they can be together. You and I are going a little bit deep here. But I think that, again, that's the point. Like, that is why this, I wrote this book in 2005, and it's still, you just found it and we're having this conversation now, right? 20 years later. So because this is a very acute longing I think people have, even if they're not sure that they have it. But the people, and I'll say that the reason that I went on to write the book about the place is because the fate of it hung in the balance when I was there, because Jim Guinan was getting older. He was in his 80s. He was not in great health. And his son was trying to take over the establishment, but his son wasn't sure that that was the thing he wanted to do. And so the community was really the community bound together. I called it human duct tape, to come and help keep the place open while Jim, the proprietor, was in and out of the hospital. And I left my job at the Wall Street Journal to help write, to help work behind the counter and tend bar and make sandwiches while I was writing a book about the community's struggle to save this place. And it was really, the book ended up being a love story about a place and all the people who came through there, to including the characters that you mentioned, one of whom was a Vietnam veteran, former federal marshal, who was very staunch Republican, and he would being there and always have great debates with this very liberal lawyer named Dan. And they were close friends, but they would just go at it and then they'd pat each other on the back and go home. And there was just rafts of characters like that. The quiet guy who never spoke much, but who every so often would come out with this like gem of a line, and the whole bar would fall silence when he finally spoke. A guy named, they called Old Mike because he'd had a son named Young Mike who had died in a car crash, who never moved his position. He stood in one position at the end of the bar, and he never stood in another position anywhere, any other time, like ever in the bar. Like that was his spot. So you can just imagine this cast of characters rotating in and out, and they made room for me. And I was very different. And yet I somehow began to fit into this fabric, and I didn't want this place to die. I didn't want the story of it to be lost. I think when you're a writer, the only way you know how to rescue something is you try and capture it in words. And that's what I ended up doing, and took this leave of absence from my job at the Wall Street Journal as a reporter and went to work there and to write the book. But those were, and the cadets that would come in and out of there, I became close to some of them. And, I still have those relationships from 20 years ago. So like you were saying, it was a bunch of very different people who became a family, even if you only saw that family for the time when you were within those walls of that building.
And maybe the reason that you fit so well was because you were the missing piece, right? They didn't have the young journalists yet to engage all of these older folks that maybe were very set in their ways. And it just really resonates with me when you talk about the ability to have a conversation, get some things off your chest, and then share a beer, and that's the end of it. And my wife makes fun of me so many times. We go somewhere, and it may be the first time, and I'll introduce myself to the bartender, and just, hey, what's your name? And she goes, why do you do that? I'm like, well, I don't know. Maybe we'll come back. And I like going places where I know people. This is the sort of thing. And I don't need, big glamorous bar. Give me a pub where I know the bartender and I know what I'm getting when I come in. And granted, everybody's different. So people might like different things, and I think that's part of what resonated so much for me reading this book, is it's a place that I long for. I like going to the same places, seeing the same faces, and feeling that sense of comfort when I walk in and know how I'm going to be treated. So you talk about.
Can I add something?
Yes.
You just said it's so important what you said, that you go in and say hello to someone and ask their name and start a conversation. Because again, going back to our screens that we're attached to all the time, our phones are with us. We don't tend to do that as much, right? We go in and we order something, then we just swipe through, we check our email or the weather or the sports score or the social media feeds, and we're not having that human to human contact. And I think that's, again, where we're starting to get lost and separated from one another. And that's something all of us can practice, even if we're not in a pub. But the looking somebody directly in the eyes, asking them their name and something about themselves, even if you're just in the grocery store or at the gas pump, people are shocked when you look them in the eye and say something like that, because it doesn't happen. And that is a fundamental part of being human. And and I am so glad that you do that. And I think it's something we all have to practice and be present more and do. And that will be the thing that I think is one piece of starting to turn this tide of us separating from one another and bring us back together as a country and as humans.
Yes, because I think, social media and the news would have you believe that everybody hates everybody, but go outside your door. My interactions with strangers by and large are very pleasant. And, however short they may be, it's not as bleak as people might make it out to be. And we just need to stack up more of those interactions, I think, to help folks realize things are still capable of being great in this country.
Yeah. Be proactive about it, and don't always wait for somebody else.
Exactly. So, in terms of being proactive and writing this book, can you explain to me your process? So, you stumble upon this place by happenstance. They welcome you with open arms. You take to all these people. You develop these friendships. In this entire time is in the back of your mind, like, I have to write a book about this, or
No.
the world needs to hear this story? How did you get from I stumbled upon Guinance to I need to put pen to paper and tell this story to everyone else?
It's a great question. In the beginning, not at all. I mean, I had no idea this would be a book. First, I just wanted to be there. I just wanted to be there, and I wanted to be with those people because I felt something. I mean, I'd lived in the same Manhattan apartment building for 3 or 4 years. I didn't even know the names of my neighbors, right? I mean, it was this anonymous, um, big high rise, and I just didn't have that sensibility. And suddenly here I was with people who uh, were just kind of fascinating in ways I'd never experienced, and had just this bank of knowledge that was different. I remember getting poison ivy, and I don't even remember if we were Googling things back then. I don't remember what we were doing, but I went in there and everybody had a solution for it, right? And so it was like
Yeah.
my own personal Google, web of humans. And I just wanted to be there. But when I realized the place was on the brink of disappearing, if Jim couldn't run it any longer, and if John, his son, wasn't able to do it, I think I was more panicked than anything, to be honest with you. I just didn't want, I was like, I just found this and now it's going to go away. And like I said, the weapon I had was, quote, pen and paper, was the story. And I thought if
Mhm.
people could know the story of this place, maybe it would help save this place. And because more people would come in to help, more people would come in to spend their money, or if the worst case scenario happened and it disappeared, which it ultimately did, then maybe years later someone else would know about it. Well, here we are having this conversation. So that's all I knew how to do. And so I remember going to the managing editor, who was the top editor at the Wall Street Journal at the time, and I was so nervous to go and ask to take a leave of absence from the Wall Street Journal to go write a book about this no-name pub and country store no one had ever
Mhm.
heard of. I was at the
Mhm.
peak of my sort of career starting to take off in journalism. And I was so nervous, and I'm not a huge drinker, but I remember being so nervous. I went to a pub in New York City before I went to ask for a leave of absence, and I literally took a shot of whiskey because I was like trying to connect myself somehow. I don't know what I was doing. I was just so nervous. Maybe it was like, oh, a pub, a pub. But then I went
Mhm.
in and I just kind of like spewed this thing about this place and it's disappearing and all these amazing people and we're losing spots like this. And the managing editor was just like, go, just go write this book. You have to go. Like it was a big deal. And he just said, yes, I can hear and see the story in this place that's fast. These types of places are fast disappearing. And so I did. And so then I just I started to think about what would be the narrative arc of the book, what was going to happen to the place, what was going to happen to Jim, the proprietor, what would happen to me as a representative of any one of us who might have stumbled into this place, and how would my life change as a result of it. So those became kind of the three storylines that got woven through it. And in the midst of it, the nuggets you and I are hitting on about community and the cast of characters and family tensions and all of those things that are so real for all of us, those became part of the underpinning of the book. And I think these are timeless themes to some degree, which is why, again, 20 years later, we're having this conversation.
Absolutely. I think you could pick this up, especially if you're a graduate of West Point, and especially if you were in school when Guinans was still up and running, because I can still distinctly remember going in to get sandwiches before I got on the train to head down to the city. I think it still resonates because of those themes that you mentioned. And you also mentioned that you did have some relationships with some cadets. So how did those come about? And you eventually made your way over to West Point, the fortress that you mentioned, as you described it, on the other side of the river. So what was it like when you went over to West Point? Because I think for a lot of people, it's this place that they hear about in maybe history books, or maybe they see the Army Navy game on TV once a year. They don't really get it. So what were those relationships like, and what were your impressions when you went over to Post for the first time?
I started getting emails from cadets, and also when they would leave and go off and serve, sometimes they would take the book with them in their bag or their trunk or whatever they had, they send me a picture of the book with them overseas, wherever they were stationed. And it was just so meaningful to me that they had carried this thing, this piece of that world of Guinans and West Point with them to there. So I kept in touch via email with a lot of folks, and there was a young cadet named Brad Hulsher at the time, and we became quite close through email, and he brought me over to West Point, and he showed me the gym where you all worked out and did your training, and then he took me in his room, very, very small room, and showed me how the bed had to be made. Then he showed me like pictures. I think he like puked up after he like had some hard workout. He's like, and look, and this is where, it was like the whole thing. And then where you ate in the I don't know, what did you call the hall where you ate? What was the name
Mess
of
hall,
it?
Washington Hall.
Yeah. So I went there, and there was, I guess, some brownie that you would have, and they'd pour chocolate milk over it. So we had that, so I got the whole
Congo bar.
Yes, that's it. So we had
Mhm.
that whole experience. And then I did a book reading over at West Point. So I just got to be very connected in a way that I don't think I would have if I had just not written the book. And I would again, like, see the cadets come over on the boats, and would see them in the stores as they left, and I'd make sandwiches for them as they would go off to the city. So that became a very important piece of connective tissue for me, and just the surrounding area, because I think you're right. People don't know so much about West Point. There's so much history around West Point, and it's also, I think, can be very, as I said before, very hard and lonely when you first get there.
Yes.
As you know.
No, exceptionally. I mean, I showed up at 17. So you're showing up at 17, 18, and kids are coming from all over the country. A lot of them, most of them are away from home for the first time, away from the comforts of home. And, you think about what could be the opposite of comfort. And I would say you could put West Point on the other end of that spectrum there. So it's not surprising also to hear then following West Point, you have 22, 23-year-old, and you're flung all over the world. And, it's a different breed of person that goes to West Point, but at the same time, we're still a young person sent all over the world to be in these immensely challenging positions. So to hear that they would bring your book places as this, like, kind of like almost like a teddy bear from home, like this comfort, is not surprising at all to hear. And it's why I would just encourage anybody to read the book, because I think that the themes, as you mentioned, really still resonate today. And I think maybe my last question, and we can wrap this up, and I feel like I could talk to you for a long time, but I don't want to take your entire day. What is the most important lesson that you personally took, from writing this book? Certainly we talked about some of the themes, but it's interesting how 9/11 set both my life and seemingly your life on a path to land us here today. But what is the most important lesson that you took from writing this book and from your time there at Guinans and in Garrison?
It is probably to keep my eyes open and to listen, because my eyes my eyes were opened first walking into this pub because I had undergone, a traumatic experience like 9/11, and I felt very
Mhm.
lucky to be alive, and I'd been shocked out of the existing inertia and existing cycle of sameness of my life at that point. And that, because my eyes were open then, I saw Guinans, and I saw this place in a way I might not have had I just flown through there, hurrying back to the city after a weekend in the country, right? It would have just been some little spot, and I maybe registered because I got something to drink, but maybe not. I mean, wouldn't have registered in the way it did. But I have learned from that moment on that to try and see things a little more than just when I'm passing through. So keeping my eyes open. And the other is the listening piece, because again, how people who, again, did not come from similar backgrounds, did not share the same politics, didn't necessarily share the same religious beliefs, how they were able to come together and listen to one another agree to disagree, and then still help one another in times of duress. That is the ultimate, to me, that's what being an American is about, right? That was so profound. And I have taken that away. And that's, to me, like when I think about what I feel like being American, like that is it. And I want to continue to do that. And I hope other people, who may read the book or think about these themes as you have, will think about that too.
Yeah. I mean, keep your eyes open and listen. It's just that's a great, great message. Again, the book is Little Chapel on the River, Gwendolyn Bounds. Thank you so much for your time today. Thank you so much for writing this story. And I have to imagine the Guinan family is proud to have their name live on in this book. And this place that has impacted so many people, probably well beyond what they even can imagine, but it truly did have that impact. Is there anything else that you're working on right now that you would like to mention or share with the listeners?
Well, I just finished my my next book, which came out last year, and the paperback just came out a couple of weeks ago, which is called Not Too Late. And it is about my late in life pursuit to become a competitive athlete in the sport of obstacle course racing, and what anyone can do in midlife to sort of shake up that inertia and that cycle of sameness that we all can face, and how all the things we think we are, you don't have to necessarily just be limited to those, right? That there is still a way to distinctively change the path that you're on. And so I've been out talking about that book and those themes recently, but they kind of both connect back to the same things with Guinans, which again is like, I found a community later in life of athletes, something I never thought I would. Same way I ended up finding a community of people with Guinans, and I never thought I would. But you want to come back to keeping your eyes open and listening. So that's once people finish Little Chapel on the River, they can check out Not Too Late. So thanks for raising that.
Absolutely. Not too late. And yes, again, Little Chapel on the River. And just, I just have to say thank you again, through no intention of yours. I mean, you found me in a really lonely time of my life when I was deployed in Iraq. And I am a firm believer that things happen for a reason. I was meant to see that spine on that shelf with that shamrock. I was meant to read this book. And just thank you so much for agreeing to chat with me today. And, I look forward to reading your other book because you're a fantastic author, fantastic writer. And I really enjoyed your writing in Little Chapel on the River. So I suspect I will enjoy the next read as I now find myself getting up there in years. So again, Wendy, thank you so much for your books and for your time. And I wish you all the best going forward. Thank you.
Thank you for having me, and thank you for being the kind of person who took the time to reach out. That sets a great example for all of us. So thank you.
All right. Thank you again once again to Gwendolyn, aka Wendy, who is awesome. I am looking forward to reading her other book about being a athlete now and later in life. And I think that's going to be very cool. All right, let's wrap things up. Any caveats? Anything I missed? I want to talk briefly about the Ryder Cup, and I know Sands.
Yeah.
You had some thoughts, so why don't you go first, Sands? Any caveats specifically about the Ryder Cup?
The captainship was piss poor. Keegan Bradley didn't know what he was doing. He's putting out Harris English and Colin Morikawa against Tommy Fleetwood and Rory McIlroy. Fleetwood's got a case to be #1 golfer in the world right now, the way he's been playing. And you're throwing out English and Morikawa, who statistically are the worst pairing like we've ever had. Just like throwing them out there in back-to-back days. He's not paying attention to who he's putting out there. So I didn't hate the idea of bringing in like good leadership, is what you were tweeting about. Like, Coach K having someone lead like that. But I think just you have to focus more on like someone who's been in that situation. Why not bring a guy back like DJ, like Dustin Johnson? He's 12-9 in career, but he knows what he's doing. Like, let him captainship the team. You have Keegan Bradley, Keegan Bradley, number 13 golfer in the world, and he's not playing. And you're bringing in Xander Schauffele's coming off an injury where he's only played two events in recent history. Morikawa's on a down year. English has been bad. And I don't know. I didn't understand the pairings. I thought like the first 2 days were just like, he's just throwing shit at the wall, hoping it would stick. So I think the captainship was just terrible. And props to the U.S. for trying to make it interesting on Sunday. But we didn't have a shot after those first 2 days.
Yeah, I think the hard thing about being a captain is you're trying to captain a bunch of people who are playing an individual sport 99% of the time. And you yourself are an individual athlete. So to ask someone, and I said Coach K, I threw that out kind of tongue in cheek just because of what he did with the U.S. Olympic basketball team and brought them back, the Redeem team there in 2008. But it's a tough proposition to ask someone to lead other guys when you yourself have never been part of a team. And maybe, Keegan Bradley, I think probably played other sports growing up. So you have a little bit of it, but not at the level that you require it at the Ryder Cup. So I think they need to bring in more consistency. They need to elect the team earlier. They need to start doing activities as a team. And I'm not saying like they need to do like trust falls and stupid stuff like that. But the difference you see is the Europeans have a camaraderie. They have a chemistry that we do not have on the U.S. team.
Right.
We have the better golfers. We don't have that chemistry. And what you saw was on Sunday, match us up and we're going to win more of those matches than Europe is. But the first 2 days, we put ourselves in such a hole because we don't know how to play team golf, which is what the Ryder Cup is. So I don't know. I'm not going to purport to understand how Keegan Bradley was coming up with those pairings that he did. And I don't want to criticize him, man in the arena sort of thing. But I just think they could benefit from some leadership.
I think you're right with that because you could tell how much it meant to the Europeans and like how obviously they're getting fired up going against the Bethpage crowd, who was obviously giving especially you look at Rory and he was going back and forth with the crowd.
Yeah, that was wild.
But it meant more to those guys. It felt like they came out. Rory said it 2 years ago when they won it. He said we're going to be the first team like in a while to go and win on American soil. He called the shot, it landed. But those guys, they played unified. It meant more to them. It felt like. But yeah, again, I mean, just another bad decision by Keegan. Ben Griffin's one of the hottest golfers all year, and he played 2 matches. It didn't make.
I don't understand it
because I was like, why is Griffin not going in these early singles? You're playing Schauffele, like again, who's been injured all year. It just didn't make a lot of sense to me. But I don't know. It is what it is. Like I said, I enjoyed the fight on Sunday. Gave me something to watch. But yeah, no, the first 2 days was just. It's like, come on, guys.
Why is it every 2 years? Why is it?
That's just the way it is. It's just the format and such is just not conducive to doing it year in and year out.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Do you guys think that that Tiger Indoor Arena League isn't that team based? Like maybe that can help fuel some of this for next Ryder Cup, so like our American boys are a little more serious about it. I don't know.
A lot of those guys playing it, but it doesn't seem like that's not going to be taken as seriously as like this is supposed to mean something. It's supposed to be the biggest team accomplishment in golf.
Yeah.
And the TGL is cool, but you're not playing outside.
I think that's for entertainment purposes. I don't think that's fueling the competitive nature with which you need to bring to the Ryder Cup to be successful. So they need to not. I think they almost need to leave Keegan in place and let him continue to build from here because I don't know that I agree that he did as poorly as you're saying he did. I mean, certainly some mistakes were made, but first time captain. I think we need consistency more so than anything right now and not trying to reinvent the wheel every 2 years because clearly that's not working.
I don't hate the idea of consistency but don't be consistently putting out Harris English and Morikawa back-to-back days.
That was
their asses beat.
Yeah.
It's like, this didn't work yesterday. Let me put Scheffler and DeChambeau on the same team and then throw these 2 guys against their best fucking team again. What are we doing?
I don't know. Rob?
Yeah. Hey, man, I want to see Army get a victory one of these weekends. I think we play Charlotte next Saturday. I'm excited for that. It's my normal
we play
Saturday
UAB.
routine.
We play UAB this Saturday.
Sorry, UAB this Saturday. My bad.
9.5 point favorite right now on the
That's
road.
right.
So
that's right.
Hopefully we can get that W.
Navy's got Air Force.
Navy's got Air Force. So I think
there's no juice behind that game. There's no juice behind that game.
Dude, no one cares.
No one cares. Sorry, I can't make people care.
Cons, I live in an Air Force city. Vegas, where I'm at, is Air Force Fighter Base Central. I saw 2 Air Force grads I always see in the gym. I dabbed them up. I said, yo, boys, you ready to take on Navy next week? And they're like, what? 2 of them, they're both athletes. One played lacrosse. One was a swimmer at fucking Air Force. They don't give a shit. Not even the grads care.
Nope. Can't make people care. So anyway,
No, but vibes are high. I'm getting some sleep finally with the little ones, and
Good.
work is busy as always. But hey, Cons, I'll see you at Army Navy, right?
yes.
Dope.
Although I don't know why we're talking about Army Navy in September, but yes, I will be there.
I don't know. I just saw that it's 75 days out, so I'm looking
I'll
at it
be
right
there.
now. My fucking
Yes, I'll be there.
fuck yeah.
Good call. Good call. All right, let's take care. Make it a great week.